2:37 a.m. Strait of Hormuz. In the USS Mason's CIC, an operator shouts, "Fast mover bearing 095, a high-speed target just streaked out from the Iranian coast, then vanished from radar. No explosion, no change in course. It simply vanished." 7 seconds later, the CIC was engulfed in the red glow of the Aegis system. Hundreds of signals appeared simultaneously. Drones skimmed the water's surface. IRGC attack boats accelerated through the darkness. Missile lock warnings rang out relentlessly across the warship. And in the narrowest strait in the Middle East, sometimes just 60 seconds is enough to ignite a crisis that shakes the entire world. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer a shipping lane, it is a death zone. This narrow strip serves as a stronghold for the IRGC's last army, the final line of defense protecting Tehran's southern coast. Cutting through the darkness are 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, the USS Mason, the USS Truxtun, and the USS McFall. These warships are operating under a fragile ceasefire on the verge of collapse. The IRGC Navy launches its ambush. A swarm of low-flying Shahed series drones manufactured by Hessa, along with high-speed Mosquito boats, the Siraj-1 surged out from Iran's rugged cliffs. They approached from multiple directions, exploiting the complex coastal terrain to mask their radar signals. The attack was designed to overwhelm the U.S. ships, forcing them to expend their interceptor missiles early. 2:40 a.m., the Aegis combat systems on all 3 ships shifted from standby to active combat mode. Through the combat coordination system, the 3 destroyers merged into a single entity. In this life-or-death arena, the 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers do not fight as 3 separate ships. They share high-resolution sensor data in real time. If the Mason's SPY-1DV radar tracks a drone on the horizon, the Truxtun and McFall will also see the same target and open fire immediately. CEC ensures that no target is missed and no bullet is wasted. The trap has snapped shut, but the IRGC has just invited a digital wolf into its own home. 2:42 a.m., Iran's attack shifts to a more treacherous phase. IRGC commanders launch a saturation maneuver to blind the U.S. fleet with overwhelming numbers. Dozens of additional Shahed drones descend to just 3 meters above the water surface, employing silent mode, a setting that completely shuts off active radar emissions and relies on pre-programmed GPS coordinates to remain invisible to standard electronic countermeasures. Simultaneously, Siraj-1 Mosquito boats accelerated to 60 knots, moving in erratic zigzag patterns to generate massive clutter on the destroyer's radar screen. Inside the USS Mason's CIC, the air is thick with the smell of ozone and intense concentration. The captain makes a critical tactical decision: hold the SEMIS. Don't launch the top-tier interceptors just yet. Instead, the ship's crew unleashes a wall of steel. The ESSM missiles launched from the Mk-41 VLS like a wall of fire, slicing through the low-flying drones before they could close in on the formation. These medium-range interceptor missiles are specifically designed to shred high-speed, low-flying targets. At the same time, the USS Truxtun fired the Naval Strike Missile, a 5th-generation stealth cruise missile co-developed by Kongsberg and Raytheon, which skimmed the water surface to intercept the Siraj-1 boats before they could close in within RPG range. Tensions reached a peak at 2:44 a.m. when the IRGC Aerospace Force made a fatal mistake. To guide the second wave of anti-ship cruise missiles, they activated a 3rd Khordad missile battery hidden on a nearby island. The moment the 3rd Khordad's phased array radar transmitted a signal, it became a beacon in the dark room. The U.S. Navy's response was immediate and devastating. An SM-6 missile was launched in anti-radiation mode. Traveling at a terrifying speed of Mach 3.5, the SM-6 slammed directly into the IRGC's radar source. The Iranian operators didn't even have time to change frequencies. The million-dollar missile struck the 3rd Khordad's radar array, turning the sophisticated system into a charred black hole of twisted metal. The message was crystal clear: if you transmit, you die. 2:45 a.m. As the battle on the sea escalated, the battlefield expanded into the air. From a forward operating base in the United Arab Emirates, two Sikorsky-built MH-60RE Seahawk helicopters equipped with Lockheed Martin's combat systems roared into the fray. Flying at extremely low altitudes to evade Iran's long-range detection, the Seahawks serve as the eyes and ears in the sky for the Aegis fleet. The Seahawk helicopters deploy the AN/APS-153V1 multi-mode radar specifically designed to detect small, fast-moving targets like the Siraj 1 speedboats amid the raging waves. This data isn't just for the pilots, it's transmitted directly to the destroyers via the Link 16 system, providing a high-resolution target map that pierces through the IRGC's attempts to use coastal terrain for cover. Using infrared gun turrets, the Seahawk crew locked onto the Iranian fleet. 2:47 a.m., the Seahawk helicopters launched a surgical strike. They fired a barrage of AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and laser-guided APKWS rockets. These missiles turned the Mosquito boats into pillars of fire with absolute precision. However, the IRGC had not yet given up. A second 3rd Cordad battery positioned deeper inland fired a TARE-2B surface-to-air missile at the lead Seahawk. The cockpit was flooded with rapid missile launch alerts. The pilot yanked the control stick hard, sending the Seahawk into a violent, sharp turn while releasing a cloud of magnesium heat decoys. The Iranian missile streaked past, exploding harmlessly in the salt-laden air, but that near miss underscored the brutal nature of the combat environment. The Seahawk helicopters remained locked in position, their sensors still locked onto targets, refusing to yield airspace as they continued to direct the fire of the destroyers, sweeping away the remaining Iranian naval assets. 2:50 a.m., the tide of battle temporarily shifted as the IRGC activated its most potent asymmetric weapon. From a series of mobile platforms along the coastline, Iran deployed the Cobra 5-8 electronic warfare system. This was not merely standard jamming, it was a coordinated electronic bubble designed to saturate the X and S bands used by U.S. sensors. The Cobra 5-8, an indigenous Iranian electronic attack system, coordinated with the remaining 3rd Cordad batteries to create a high-intensity interference field beginning to wipe clean the radar screens of the U.S. fleet. The impact was immediate. Over the radio, the lead Seahawk pilot reported a sensor-blind condition. The MH-60R's AN/APS-153V1 radar, which just minutes earlier had been guiding fire with surgical precision, now struggled to distinguish between real targets and a wall of electronic white noise. Amid this digital fog, the IRGC seized the opportunity. A low observable suicide drone, after slipping through a blind spot created by the jamming, penetrated the outer defense layers of the USS Truxtun. Although the ship's Phalanx CIWS system managed to shred the drone at the last second, the resulting kinetic explosion sent a hail of high-velocity shrapnel raining down on the Truxtun's upper structure. The shockwave caused concussion damage to the SPQ-9B auxiliary radar antenna, temporarily disconnecting it. 2:52 a.m. tension in the fleet reached a boiling point. The USS Truxtun was forced to switch to reduced sensor mode while firefighting teams rushed to deploy on deck. On the MH-60R, the cockpit lights flashed amber as a missile from the 3rd Cordad system, guided by continuous tracking from the Cobra 5-8, streaked past the aircraft's fuselage by just a few meters. The pilot was forced to execute an emergency dive, jettisoning all remaining heat decoys to survive. For the first time since the engagement began, the U.S. Navy found itself on the defensive, struggling to maintain situational awareness against an enemy that had turned the electromagnetic spectrum into a weaponized fog of chaos. 2:55 a.m. Just as the IRGC prepared a coordinated sea and air assault to exploit the Truxtun's vulnerability, the U.S. Navy played its trump card. A high-speed suicide boat packed with explosives burst from the darkness, heading straight for the starboard side of the USS at 50 knots. Conventional guns struggled to track it through the thick jamming. However, the USS Mason was equipped with Helios, a 60-kilowatt directed energy weapon developed by Lockheed Martin. An invisible high-energy laser beam swept across the water's surface. 3 seconds later, the US-5 lost control and exploded into a fireball. In just 3 seconds, extreme heat melted the engine block and ignited the fuel, turning the threat into a harmless fireball before it could make contact with the ship's hull. But the real game changer is just beginning to reveal itself. Captain Mason of the ship authorized the use of SEAWIP Block 3, a revolutionary electronic attack system manufactured by Northrop